The emergency session of the Galactic Concordat had been going for 6 hours, and nothing had changed. The holographic display in the center of the grand chamber showed the same terrible truth it had shown that morning. Red markers spread across the star map like a disease, each one representing a world conquered by the Krithak Dominion. 47 species had seats in this council chamber. 12 of those species no longer had homeworlds to return to. Ambassador Velnara stood at the center podium, her forearms gesturing in a pattern that her species used to show deep distress. Her compound eyes reflected the red glow of the display as she watched another admiral present another plan that would not work. The Dominion had more than 10,000 warships. The Concordat had perhaps 8,000, and half of those were damaged or pinned down defending critical systems. Admiral Thexul was speaking now, his reptilian face set in grim determination. We must consolidate our forces at the Hadrian defense line. If we fall back to a tighter perimeter, we can hold them for perhaps 6 months, long enough to build more ships. 6 months to build ships that will face the same fate as the ones we have already lost. Someone muttered from the gallery above. Velnara wanted to disagree, but she could not. The Krithak ships were massive, some of them 15 kilometers long. They carried thousands of warriors and enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The Concordat ships were impressive too, most of them ranging from 2 to 8 kilometers in length. But the Dominion had numbers and they had momentum, and they had 400 years of conquest behind them. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Velnara's assistant, a young human named Sarah Chen, appeared on a smaller display near her station. Humans were the newest members of the Concordat, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 12 years ago. They were an odd species, short-lived and energetic, but pleasant enough. Their single representative on the council rarely spoke during military discussions. Ambassador, we have a priority transmission from Earth. Admiral Helena Voss requests to address the council. Velnara felt a flutter of hope, then immediately suppressed it. Earth had 3 star systems under their control and a modest merchant fleet. What could they possibly offer? Still, courtesy demanded she accept all offers of assistance. Put her through. The holographic display shifted and a human woman appeared. She wore a dark blue uniform with silver insignia on the shoulders. Her hair was gray and pulled back severely, and her eyes were the color of Earth's oceans. She looked old by human standards, perhaps 60 of their short years. Members of the Concordat, I am Admiral Helena Voss, commander of humanity's 3rd Fleet. We have been monitoring the situation with the Krithak Dominion. Earth wishes to offer military assistance. The chamber fell silent for a moment, then someone laughed. It was a bitter sound, not meant to be cruel but full of despair. Velnara spoke quickly, trying to smooth over the awkwardness. Admiral Voss, humanity's support is deeply appreciated. However, this conflict requires massive military assets. Perhaps Earth could assist with refugee transport or medical supplies? We are offering military assets, Ambassador. Voss did not seem offended. Her expression remained calm, almost neutral. The 3rd Fleet is ready to deploy immediately. We await only your coordinates. Another admiral, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix, spoke up. With respect, Admiral, we have reviewed Earth's naval registry. You have approximately 90 vessels total across all your fleets. We face an enemy with 10,000. 87 operational vessels in 3rd Fleet specifically, Voss corrected. Our largest ship is 400 meters long. I understand how this appears. The Crystal Admiral's light pulsed in a pattern that indicated sympathy. Your courage is commendable, but this is not a conflict that can be won with courage alone. Velnara pulled up Earth's naval specifications on her private screen. The numbers were worse than she had imagined. Destroyers barely 200 meters long, frigates even smaller. Their largest vessels, which they called battleships, would be dwarfed by even a standard Concordat cruiser. She had seen civilian cargo haulers with more mass than these warships. Perhaps, she said carefully, Earth's forces would be better suited to defensive operations, protecting your own systems, ensuring the Dominion does not threaten human space. Admiral Voss smiled slightly. It was not a happy expression. Ambassador, if the Concordat falls, Earth falls with it. We know this. The Dominion does not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They conquer. We would rather fight beside you now than wait to fight alone later. Thexul leaned forward, his clawed hands gripping the edge of his console. Your spirit is admirable, human. But you must understand. The Dominion's smallest warship is larger than your largest. Their shields can withstand sustained bombardment from weapons that would reduce your vessels to atoms. This is not cowardice I speak, but simple mathematics. I understand mathematics quite well, Admiral, Voss replied. And I understand war. We're not asking for a key strategic position. We're not asking for glory. We're asking for coordinates and permission to engage the enemy. The chamber filled with the sound of a dozen species, all trying to speak at once. Velnara raised two of her arms for silence. The Council appreciates Earth's willingness to join this fight. However, I must be frank. We cannot afford to waste resources recovering human casualties when your fleet is destroyed. It would be a tragedy and a strategic burden. Then assign us somewhere the tragedy will be minimized, Voss said quietly. Give us the least critical front. The furthest position, somewhere we can at least delay the enemy while you consolidate your real forces. Velnara looked at the star map. The Hadrian defense line had 17 positions. 15 were critical choke points that absolutely had to hold. One was a moderately important system with civilian populations, and one was essentially empty space near a gas giant, important only because it represented a gap in the line. Very well, Velnara said. Third Fleet is assigned to position Hadrian 7. A fleet will be dispatched to support you. But please understand, Admiral Voss, that we expect the Dominion to break through your position within days of contact. Use that time to evacuate your personnel and fall back. Understood, Ambassador. Third Fleet will deploy immediately. Expect us in 6 weeks. The transmission ended. The chamber remained quiet for a long moment. Finally, Admiral Thexul spoke, his voice heavy with regret. They are brave. I wish we could save them. They are fools, another admiral muttered. Sending ships that small against the Dominion is suicide. Velnara returned to her private chamber after the session ended. Sarah Chen was waiting with a cup of tea, a human custom that Velnara had grown fond of. I heard the transmission, the young woman said quietly. For what it's worth, Admiral Voss doesn't make mistakes. If she's taking the fleet in, she has a reason. The reason is that your species is too young to understand what they face, Velnara said, but her voice was gentle. I do not want to see humanity destroyed, Sarah. You have so much potential. Maybe that's why we're going, Sarah replied. Because we don't know enough to be afraid yet. Velnara sipped her tea and looked at the star map on her personal display. 6 weeks until the human fleet arrived. 6 weeks until she would have to write a memorial for an entire species that had been too brave for their own good. The red markers of Dominion conquest seemed to pulse like a heartbeat on the display. She wondered if humans understood what those red markers meant. Each one was millions of dead. Each one was a civilization erased. Each one was a battle that had been lost despite the best efforts of species far older and more powerful than humanity. But they were coming anyway. Such small ships, such a tiny fleet, such incredible foolishness. Velnara felt one of her hearts ache with sadness. She had liked the humans in the short time she had known them. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in a flash of blue light that scattered across the void like dying stars. Admiral Thexul watched from the bridge of his flagship, the Unbreakable Will, as 87 tiny ships took position near the gas giant. His tactical officer had helpfully overlaid size comparisons on the display. The largest human vessel was barely larger than one of his fighter craft. They looked like toys, his weapons officer muttered. Thexul did not reprimand him. It was true. The human destroyers were sleek things, all angles and armor plating, but they were so small. His own fleet consisted of 300 ships, including 20 cruisers, that massed more than all the human vessels combined. And he knew with grim certainty that his fleet was not enough to hold this position. Open a channel to the human commander, he ordered. Admiral Voss appeared on his screen. She looked tired, as if the 6-week journey had aged her. Humans always seemed tired to Thexul. Their lifespans were so short that perhaps they were always racing against time. Admiral Thexul, 3rd Fleet reporting for duty. Admiral Voss, welcome to Hadrian 7. He tried to keep the pity from his voice. Our scouts report enemy movement. The Dominion is sending a fleet to this sector. 600 ships, mostly cruisers and heavy carriers. They will arrive in approximately 8 hours. He watched Voss carefully, waiting for the fear to show. Instead, she nodded once as if he had told her the weather forecast. 600. What's your battle plan, Admiral? Standard defensive formation. We will form a line between the enemy and the gas giant's orbital stations. We hold as long as possible, then execute a fighting retreat toward the inner system. He paused. Admiral Voss, I must be honest. Against 600 Dominion ships, we cannot win. We can only delay them. Understood. Where do you want my ships? Thexul had thought about this during the long wait for the human fleet to arrive. He did not want to watch them die in the first volley. Take position behind my formation. When we begin our retreat, you will have advance warning. Use that time to escape. Negative, Admiral. Voss leaned forward slightly. Third Fleet will take the right flank. We'll maintain a loose formation at 15,000 kilometers from your line. Admiral Voss, the right flank will receive heavy fire. Your ships will manage. Third Fleet out. The transmission ended. Thexel stared at the empty screen. Beside him, his first officer made a sound of frustration. Stubborn. They do not understand what they face. No, Thexel agreed quietly. They do not. 8 hours later, the Dominion fleet arrived. They came in a formation that had broken 100 worlds. A massive wedge of ships, each one broadcasting its power and dominance. The smallest was 3 kilometers long. The largest stretched nearly 8 kilometers, its hull covered in weapons ports that glowed with ready fire. The Dominion commander's message was simple. Surrender or die. Thexel gave the only answer he could. We stand. The battle began as it always did. The Dominion ships advanced in formation, their shields shimmering with power. Thexel's fleet opened fire, long-range particle beams and missile volleys that lit up the void. The Dominion ships returned fire, and space became a storm of energy and explosions. Then the human fleet moved, and everything Thexel thought he knew about space combat stopped making sense. The human ships scattered. There was no other word for it. One moment they were in a loose formation, the next they were everywhere, moving in patterns that seemed random but somehow coordinated. His tactical display struggled to track them. Sir, the human fleet is breaking formation, his tactical officer reported, confusion clear in his voice. I can see that, Thexel growled. Were they fleeing already? But no, they were moving toward the enemy, not away, just not in any formation he recognized. Then the human ships opened fire, and Thexel understood that war had changed. The humans did not use energy weapons. Instead, they fired solid projectiles, thousands of them, tiny pieces of metal that his sensors barely registered. The projectiles moved at impossible speeds, nearly a fraction of light speed. They should have been easy to dodge, but there were so many of them, and they came from so many angles. A Dominion cruiser's shields flared as hundreds of tungsten rounds hammered into it. The shields held for perhaps 3 seconds, then collapsed. The rounds punched through the hull like it was paper. Atmosphere vented. Secondary explosions rippled along the ship's length. By the ancestors, someone whispered. The human ships did not stay still long enough to be targeted. They moved in ways that should have turned their crews into paste. 40 gravities of acceleration, 50 more. They curved and twisted through space like living things. A human destroyer, barely 200 meters long, slipped past a Dominion battleship's weapons fire and launched something. Torpedoes, his tactical officer said. But sir, they're not flying straight. They're maneuvering independently. Thexel watched as 20 torpedoes spread out, then converged on a single Dominion ship from different angles. The enemy's defensive guns destroyed half of them, but the rest got through. The explosions were not large, but they were precise. Each torpedo struck a critical system. Engines, weapons, command deck. The Dominion ship went dark and began to drift. How many ships have the humans destroyed? Thexel demanded. 17 confirmed kills, sir. Another 30 with critical damage. His tactical officer's voice was shaking. Sir, they've been fighting for 11 minutes. 11 minutes. Thexel's fleet had destroyed 9 enemy ships in the same time, and they had 300 vessels to the humans' 87. He looked at the tactical display again, really looked at it. The human ships were not just fighting. They were hunting. A pack of human frigates surrounded a Dominion carrier. They fired from all sides, never staying in one place, never giving the carrier a clean shot. The carrier's shields failed. The carrier exploded. The human ships were already moving to their next target before the debris finished expanding. Admiral Voss's voice came over the command channel, calm and professional. All units go weapons free. Remember, there are no points for second place. Hunt them down, not fight, not engage. Hunt. The Dominion commander tried to reform his fleet, tried to establish a defensive line, but the human ships would not let him. They struck at his flanks, at his rear, at any ship that separated from the group even slightly. They fired those terrible railguns that moved too fast to dodge and torpedoes that thought for themselves. 3 hours into the battle, the Dominion fleet began to retreat. They had lost more than 200 ships. Thexel's fleet had lost 18. The human fleet had lost 7, but the survivors showed damage. One destroyer was leaking atmosphere from a dozen breaches but still firing its weapons. The Dominion ships ran, and the human ships chased them, still firing, still hunting, until they reached the edge of sensor range. When it was over, Thexel sat in his command chair and tried to understand what he had just witnessed. His first officer stood beside him, all forearms hanging limply in shock. "Sir, what were those tactics?" "I do not know," Thexel admitted. "I have fought in 40 engagements. I have never seen anything like that." "They fought without honor," the weapons officer said, but his voice lacked conviction. "They did not give the enemy a chance to surrender. They struck from behind, from the sides. They destroyed ships that were already crippled. They fought to win," Thexel corrected quietly. He opened a channel to Admiral Voss. The human woman appeared on his screen, a cut on her forehead leaking blood. Her uniform was scorched on one side. "Admiral Voss, my fleet thanks you for your assistance. Just doing our job, Admiral." She wiped blood from her eye. "We'll need 6 hours for damage control, then we'll be ready for the next wave." "The next wave," Thexel repeated. "You expect them to return?" "They will. We hurt them, but we didn't break them. When they come back, they'll bring more ships." She smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator. "Let them come. We'll be ready." The transmission ended. Thexel turned to his first officer. "Send a message to Ambassador Velnara. Tell her the human fleet has engaged the enemy and achieved victory. Tell her—" He paused, searching for words. "Tell her we were wrong about them." "What should we tell her about their tactics, sir?" Thexel looked at the tactical display, at the debris field that stretched for thousands of kilometers, at the markers showing where 87 tiny ships had broken an enemy fleet 6 times their number. Tell her the humans do not fight like anyone we have ever known. And tell her we may actually survive this war. The message reached the Kruthak Dominion's High Command 3 days after the defeat at Hadrian 7. Grand Admiral Vorketh read the report twice, certain there had been an error in the transmission. 600 ships reduced to 380 by a force 1/7 their size. It was impossible. It was also true. He studied the tactical recordings, watching the small human ships dart and weave through his fleet like insects. No, not insects. Insects were fragile. These ships moved with purpose and precision. They moved like predators. "What species are these humans?" he demanded. His intelligence officer brought up the file. "Newcomers, Grand Admiral. They achieved faster-than-light travel only recently. They control 3 star systems. Their military is estimated at fewer than 100 vessels total." "That estimate is clearly wrong," Vorketh said coldly. He watched another recording of human torpedoes hunting a Dominion cruiser. Watch them coordinate their attack like a pack of living creatures. "Prepare the 8th Battle Group. 1,200 ships, including 3 world breakers. We will crush these humans and make an example of them." "Target, Grand Admiral?" Vorketh smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "They defend the mining colony at Outpost Tarsus. 4 million civilians. Let us see how brave they are when they must choose between fighting and saving innocents. Send the fleet." Outpost Tarsus orbited a red dwarf star, surrounded by an asteroid belt rich in rare metals. Admiral Helena Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UNS Defiant, and looked at the tactical situation. It was bad. The Concordat forces in the system were already evacuating civilians, their massive transport ships struggling to load refugees fast enough. Admiral Thexel appeared on her communication screen. After the battle at Hadrian 7, he had been reassigned to coordinate with her fleet. "Admiral Voss, our scouts confirm the enemy fleet composition. 1,200 ships. We cannot win this fight. We must complete the evacuation and retreat." "How long until the evacuation is complete?" 72 hours at current rate. "The enemy will arrive in 48. Voss nodded slowly, her mind already working through the problem. "Then we buy you 24 hours. Keep loading those transports, Admiral." "Admiral Voss, I must protest. Your fleet cannot hold against 1,200 ships, and they are bringing world breakers. Those vessels are designed to destroy planets. Your largest ship would fit inside one of their cargo bays." "I understand the math, Admiral. 3rd Fleet is staying. You have your orders." Thexel's reptilian features showed an emotion Voss had learned to recognize, frustration mixed with respect. "You are either the bravest human I have met or the most insane." "Maybe both," Voss said with a tired smile. "We'll find out in 48 hours. She cut the transmission and turned to her staff. "Get me Commander Park from the Engineering Corps, and I want complete mining surveys of this asteroid field. Every rock bigger than a shuttle. I want to know where it is and what it's made of." Her first officer, Commander Sarah Chen, raised an eyebrow. Sarah was young, barely 30, but she had proven herself in the last battle. "What are you planning, Admiral?" "We're going to do what humans do best, Commander. We're going to cheat." For the next 48 hours, the human fleet worked without rest. Engineering crews in spacesuits moved through the asteroid field. attaching small devices to carefully selected rocks. Mining charges, normally used for extracting ore, were repurposed and networked together. Navigation buoys were hacked and reprogrammed. Civilian mining equipment was hauled up from the colony and converted into weapons. Commander Park, a stocky woman with grease-stained hands, reported to Voss on the bridge. "Admiral, we've placed 8,000 mines throughout the field. They're linked to a central control system. We can detonate them in any pattern you want. We've also got 50 fusion reactors from the colony rigged as improvised energy weapons. They'll get one shot each before they melt down, but that one shot will hurt. What about the asteroid positioning? Trickier. We've attached maneuvering thrusters to 300 large asteroids. We can move them, but not quickly. Think of them as very slow missiles." Voss studied the tactical display. The asteroid field surrounded Outpost Tarsus like a shell. Millions of rocks from pebbles to mountains. The perfect place to hide surprises. "Good work, Commander. Now get some sleep. You'll need to be sharp when this starts." The Krethak Dominion fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 1,200 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a formation meant to inspire terror. 3 Worldbreaker-class dreadnoughts led the fleet, each one 20 kilometers of armor and weapons. They were not built for speed or elegance. They were built to destroy civilizations. Grand Admiral Vorketh broadcast his message to the colony. "Humans of Outpost Tarsus, you have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will demonstrate the power of the Dominion. Your fleet will be destroyed. Your colony will be reduced to ash. Your species will learn what happens to those who defy us." Admiral Voss responded calmly. "This is Admiral Helena Voss of the United Nations of Earth. Your terms are rejected. If you want this colony, come and take it." Vorketh felt a flash of anger at the insolence. "As you wish. Fleet advance. Destroy everything." The Dominion fleet moved into the asteroid field, confidently pushing through the rocks. Their shields were strong enough to shrug off any natural debris. Their sensors swept ahead, looking for the human fleet. They found nothing. The asteroid field appeared empty except for rocks and mining equipment. "Where are they hiding?" Vorketh demanded. Then space exploded around him. Thousands of mines detonated simultaneously, not randomly but in carefully timed patterns. Each explosion sent debris flying at tremendous speeds. Asteroids shattered and their fragments became projectiles. The fragments hit shields, weakening them. More mines detonated, more debris flew. The chain reaction spread through the fleet like wildfire. A Dominion cruiser's shields failed under the constant bombardment. A chunk of asteroid the size of a building punched through its hull. The ship broke in half. "Evasive maneuvers," Vorketh shouted, but it was too late. The fleet was deep in the asteroid field now, and the rocks themselves had become weapons. Navigation buoys hacked by human engineers broadcast false coordinates. Ships that relied on those coordinates suddenly found themselves on collision courses with asteroids. Then the human ships appeared, emerging from hiding places among the larger asteroids. They had been there all along, cold and silent, waiting. Now they attacked from a dozen directions at once, their railguns firing, their torpedoes launching. They struck at damaged ships, at vessels whose shields were already weakened by the debris storm. A human frigate, tiny compared to its target, accelerated straight toward a Worldbreaker-class dreadnought. Vorketh watched in disbelief as the small ship ignored all defensive fire, ignored common sense, and rammed directly into the dreadnought's engine section at tremendous speed. The collision should have been meaningless. The dreadnought was so large, so massive, but the human ship hit precisely where it needed to, and it was moving at nearly a tenth of light speed. The impact destroyed the dreadnought's engines and set off a chain reaction in its fuel systems. The massive ship began to list, powerless. Did they just suicide ram us? Vorketh's weapons officer asked in shock. "Negative," the sensor officer reported. The crew evacuated in escape pods 3 seconds before impact. They're already being picked up by another human ship. They had planned it. They had calculated exactly when to abandon ship, exactly where to hit, exactly what would happen. Vorketh felt something he had not felt in decades of conquest. He felt afraid. The battle raged for 18 hours. The human fleet used every trick they could devise. Makeshift weapons on the colony's surface fired at ships passing overhead, crippling 2 more dreadnoughts. Human destroyers lured Dominion ships into carefully positioned ambushes. Torpedoes worked in groups to overwhelm defenses. Nothing was wasted. Every shot had a purpose. When Vorketh finally ordered a retreat, he had lost 814 ships. The human fleet had lost 34 vessels, but they had won. The transports had finished evacuating. The colony was safe. 4 million civilians were alive because 87 tiny ships had refused to surrender. Admiral Thexel arrived with reinforcements 3 hours after the battle ended. He found the human fleet still active, still alert, salvaging what they could from their damaged ships. Admiral Voss looked exhausted when she appeared on his screen. Her uniform was torn. She had burns on her arms, but she was smiling. "Evacuation complete, Admiral. The colony is empty. You can move in your repair ships." "Admiral Voss, I have no words. What you have accomplished here?" "We did what needed to be done," Voss interrupted gently. "That's all. But Admiral, I need to request immediate resupply. We're low on torpedoes and railgun ammunition, and we need engineers. A lot of our ships are held together with emergency welds and hope." Thexul looked at the tactical recordings, at the debris field that stretched through the entire asteroid belt. Ships held together with welds and hope had just defeated a fleet 15 times their size. "I will send everything you need. But please, Admiral, your crews must rest. Rest later. War now." Voss straightened despite her obvious exhaustion. "Besides, I think we made them angry." Ambassador Velnara had not slept in 3 days. She stood in her private office, staring at the reports from Outpost Tarsus, reading them over and over because they could not possibly be real. 87 ships, 1,200 enemy vessels. The humans had won, not just survived but won decisively. It defied everything she understood about warfare. "Ambassador, you asked to see me?" Sarah Chen stood in the doorway holding a data pad. The young human liaison looked as tired as Velnara felt. "Yes. Sarah, I need you to explain something to me." "How did they do it? Your fleet is so small, your ships are so tiny, yet you have now defeated 2 enemy fleets that should have destroyed you easily. What am I missing?" Sarah sat down, setting her datapad on the desk. "Permission to speak freely, Ambassador?" "Always. You've been measuring us wrong. You look at our ships and see how small they are. You count our fleet and see how few vessels we have. You think we're weak?" Sarah leaned forward. "But you're asking the wrong questions. You should be asking why we build ships that way. You should be asking where we learn to fight." Velnara felt her primary arms gesture in confusion. "Then tell me. Make me understand. The concordate species, all of you developed space travel and then you figured out space combat, right? You took what you knew about fighting and adapted it to 3 dimensions and 0 gravity." "Yes, of course. That is the natural progression." Sarah shook her head. "Earth did it differently. We mastered 3-dimensional combat before we ever left our planet." "How? Your planet is 2-dimensional. Land, air, and ocean. 71% of Earth's surface is covered in water, and humans have been fighting on, under, and around that water for thousands of years." Sarah pulled up images on her datapad. "Submarine warfare, Admiral. Ships that hide beneath the waves, that strike without warning, that hunt in packs. We've been perfecting those tactics for 400 years. Velnara looked at the images. "Strange vessels moving through blue water. I do not understand. What does water combat have to do with space?" "Everything. In water, you move in 3 dimensions. You deal with pressure and temperature gradients. You hide in terrain. You use sonar instead of sight. You coordinate with vessels you can't see. You attack from unexpected angles." Sarah smiled. "Space combat? That's just submarine warfare with a bigger ocean." Velnara sat down slowly, her mind racing. She pulled up the tactical recordings from Hadrian 7, watching them with new understanding. The way the human ships scattered and reformed, the way they attacked from multiple vectors, the way they hunted damaged ships. These were not the tactics of a species learning to fight in space. These were ancient tactics refined over centuries, applied to a new environment. "Show me more," she demanded. "Show me everything." For the next 6 hours, Sarah walked her through Earth's naval history. Surface fleets that had fought across Earth's oceans, carrier groups that projected power across thousands of miles, wolf packs of submarines that had turned the tide of a war, missile cruisers that could strike targets beyond the horizon. Every innovation, every tactic, every lesson learned in blood and salt water. "We had to learn this," Sarah explained. "Earth is one planet, but the oceans divided us. To project power, to protect trade, to survive, we needed to master naval warfare. And we're good at it, Ambassador. We've been doing it longer than we've been doing anything else except farming." Velnara watched recordings of Earth's naval battles. Ships moving in coordination, appearing from nowhere, striking and vanishing. The parallels to what she had seen at Hadrian 7 and Outpost Tarsus were undeniable. "You brought 4 centuries of experience to space combat. You already knew how to fight in 3 dimensions. You already knew how to use terrain and stealth and pack tactics." "Exactly. When other species see space, they see it as an extension of land warfare. Big armies meeting on big battlefields. But we see it as an ocean. The biggest ocean that ever existed. And we know how to fight on oceans." A horrible thought occurred to Velnara. "Sarah, how many ships does Earth actually have?" Sarah met her eyes calmly. You have access to our public registry, Ambassador. That is not an answer. The Third Fleet has 80 ships remaining after the battle at Outpost Tarsus. Earth has 16 other numbered fleets, each of similar size. We also have system defense forces, patrol groups, and reserve vessels. In total, about 1,400 combat ships, not counting support vessels, transports, or civilian militia. The room seemed to tilt. Velnara gripped the edge of her desk with all four arms. 1,400 ships. You told us you had 90 vessels total. No, Ambassador. We told you the Third Fleet had 87 vessels. The Council assumed that was our entire navy. We didn't correct that assumption because Admiral Voss wanted to prove what we could do before asking for a command position. It seemed more polite than showing up and demanding you put a human in charge of your military. In charge of... Velnara could not finish the sentence. She pulled up the battle reports again, seeing them in a new light. A tiny fleet, representing less than 6% of humanity's total military strength, had defeated two enemy fleets many times larger. What could the full human navy do? I need to call an emergency council session, Velnara said quietly. The council needs to know all of this. I'll inform Admiral Voss, Sarah said. She's been waiting for this conversation. The emergency session convened within hours. The council chamber was packed, with representatives from all 47 species present. Velnara stood at the central podium, and beside her stood Admiral Helena Voss, present via hologram from her flagship. Velnara began with a simple statement. The Council has been operating under incorrect assumptions about humanity's military capabilities. We believed their entire fleet consisted of approximately 90 vessels. This information was incomplete. The chamber filled with confused voices. Admiral Thexul spoke up. Ambassador, we have reviewed Earth's public registry. The numbers are clear. The registry listed Earth's Third Fleet, Admiral Voss said calmly. It did not list the 1st, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, or 17th fleets. It did not list our system defense forces. It did not list our reserve vessels. It did not list our civilian militia. Earth's total military numbers approximately 1,400 frontline combat vessels. Silence. Complete absolute silence. Then everyone tried to speak at once. Velnara raised her arms for quiet. Admiral Voss, why did you not inform the Council of this earlier? Because you would not have believed us, Ambassador. You looked at our small ships and saw weakness. If we had claimed to have 1,400 vessels, you would have assumed we were counting cargo haulers and patrol boats. So we showed you what one fleet could do. We let our actions speak for us. Your actions, a crystalline admiral said slowly, have included destroying nearly 2,000 Dominion ships while losing fewer than 50 of your own. If one fleet can do this, what could your full navy accomplish? That depends on how you use us, Admiral. We can't win this war alone. We don't have enough ships to hold all the critical systems, and we can't be everywhere at once. But we can teach you how we fight. We can show you our tactics. And if the Council is willing, we can coordinate a unified strategy. Admiral Thexul stood up. Ambassador Velnara, I move that we grant Admiral Voss the rank of Supreme Allied Commander, with full authority to coordinate concordate and human forces. We have fought the Dominion for 2 years and lost ground every month. The humans have fought them for 2 battles and won both times. I do not care about pride or tradition. I care about survival. Let the humans lead. The vote was not unanimous. Some species objected to giving an outsider such authority. Some felt their honor was at stake. Some simply could not accept that their way of fighting was inferior. But the vote passed with enough support. Admiral Voss accepted with a simple nod. Thank you for your trust. I'll do my best to earn it. Now let's get to work. I need complete tactical assessments from every fleet commander. I need engineering specifications for all ship classes. And I need to know every asset we have available, including civilian vessels that can be converted to military use. What is your plan, Admiral? Velnara asked. We're going to stop playing defense. The Dominion has momentum because they've been advancing for 2 years without significant resistance. We're going to take that momentum away from them. We're going to hit their supply lines, their communication networks, their forward bases. We're going to make them fight on our terms, not theirs. And we're going to teach every ship captain in the Concordat how to fight the way Earth fights. And how is that? The crystalline admiral asked. Admiral Voss smiled, but it was not a warm expression. It was the smile of someone who had spent a lifetime studying war. We fight to win, not to be honorable, not to be fair, not to give the enemy a chance. We fight to win, and we use every advantage we have, and we don't apologize for it. The Dominion has been conquering species for 400 years because they're ruthless and efficient, while Earth has been fighting wars for 10,000 years. We wrote the book on Ruthless and Efficient. Velnara felt something she had not felt since this war began. She felt hope. The briefing room aboard the UNS Defiant was packed with holographic projections of fleet commanders from 47 different species. Admiral Helena Voss stood at the center, looking at faces that ranged from skeptical to desperate. 3 weeks had passed since she had taken command of the Allied forces. 3 weeks of intensive training, reorganization, and planning. Now it was time to put all of that work to the test. Operation Earthbreaker begins in 72 hours, Voss announced. Our target is the Carveth system, the primary supply nexus for the Dominion's entire war effort. Every ship they send to the front lines passes through Carveth. Every resource they steal from conquered worlds gets processed there. Every command decision flows through their communication hub in that system. Take Carveth and we cut the head off the snake. Admiral Thexul studied the tactical display. The Dominion has 3,000 ships defending that system. Our combined fleet numbers 6,400 vessels. We have numerical advantage, but Carveth has extensive fortifications. Orbital defense platforms, minefields, planetary shields. The Concordat War College estimates a siege of Carveth would take 6 to 8 months, with catastrophic casualties. The Concordat War College thinks in terms of traditional warfare, Voss replied. Orbital bombardments, blockades, grinding attrition. That's not how we're going to do this. We're going to take Carveth in 72 hours. A Concordat admiral, a being of crystalline structure that pulsed with skeptical light, spoke up. Admiral Voss, I respect what you have accomplished, but this seems impossible. Even with human tactics, we cannot simply overwhelm such defenses in 3 days. You're right. We can't overwhelm them. Voss smiled. So we're not going to try. Commander Chen, bring up the operational plan. Sarah Chen, now promoted to Voss's chief of staff, activated a series of tactical displays. Operation Earthbreaker has 3 phases. Phase 1 is information warfare. We're going to hack every communication network the Dominion uses. We're going to feed them false intelligence about fleet movements, supply shortages, and internal rebellions. We're going to make them paranoid and confused. You can hack their secure networks? Someone asked doubtfully. We've been doing it for 3 weeks, Sarah replied. Humanity has been conducting cyber warfare since before we had spaceflight. We're very good at it. Right now, the Dominion Command thinks they have rebel uprisings in 3 different sectors. They've pulled ships from Carveth to respond, ships that aren't coming back in time. Voss took over. Phase 2 is distributed assault. We're not going to mass our fleet and attack head-on. We're splitting into 200 task forces, each with 20 to 40 ships. These task forces will hit Carveth from every direction simultaneously. The Dominion will have to split their forces to respond, and split forces are vulnerable forces. And Phase 3? Thexul asked. Phase 3 is overwhelming firepower at decisive points. Once their fleet is scattered and confused, we concentrate our forces on their command ships and supply depots. We destroy their ability to coordinate a defense. Then we take the system. Voss's expression hardened. I'm not interested in a fair fight. I'm interested in winning. This operation will be fast, brutal, and decisive. The Dominion has been fighting honorable battles for 4 centuries. We're going to teach them what happens when honor meets efficiency. The fleet assembled at the staging point. A System 3 jumps from Carveth. 6,400 ships representing 47 species, organized into 200 task forces. It was the largest military operation in Concordat history. Admiral Thexul commanded one of the task forces, a mixed group of 30 human and Concordat vessels. His communications officer was a young human named Lieutenant Marcus Webb. Over the past 3 weeks, Thexul had learned to trust the humans even if he did not always understand them. Lieutenant Webb, explain to me again why we are not traveling in formation. Because formations are predictable, sir. The Dominion will expect us to arrive in a standard battle formation. Instead, each task force will arrive at a different point around Carveth, at slightly different times from different approach vectors. They won't know where to concentrate their defenses. It seems chaotic, Webb grinned. That's the point, sir. Chaos is our weapon. The Dominion likes order, hierarchy, predictable tactics. We're going to give them chaos and they won't know how to respond. The task forces jumped to Carveth in waves. Thexul's group arrived to find space already alive with battle. The Dominion fleet was trying to respond to attacks coming from a dozen directions at once. Their communications were jammed. Their sensors were being spoofed by human electronic warfare, and their command structure was falling apart. Sir, we're detecting Dominion flagship Eternal Domination at coordinates 337, Webb reported. Admiral Voss is requesting all available task forces converge on that target. All available task forces?
How many is that?
42, sir. 860 ships. Thexul felt his blood run cold. We are concentrating nearly a seventh of our fleet on a single target. Yes, sir. Once we take out their flagship, their command structure collapses. Then they're just individual ships without coordination. It went against everything Thexul had learned about warfare. You did not risk so many ships on a single target. But he had learned to trust human tactics even when they seemed insane. Helm, set course for the flagship. Weapons, prepare for concentrated fire. 42 task forces moving from 42 different directions converged on the Eternal Domination. The Dominion flagship was massive, 15 kilometers of armor and weapons. Its shields could withstand bombardment from 100 ships. But it was not facing 100 ships. It was facing 860, all firing simultaneously from different angles. The flagship's shields lasted 40 seconds. Then the concentrated railgun fire, the torpedo salvos, the particle beams, and missile swarms all struck home. The Eternal Domination broke apart in a series of explosions that lit up the system like a new sun. Flagship destroyed, Webb reported calmly. Dominion fleet is breaking formation. They're trying to retreat. Do not let them, Thexul ordered, and he felt strange saying it. A year ago, he would have allowed a defeated enemy to retreat with honor. Now he understood what Admiral Voss had tried to teach them. This was not about honor. This was about ending the war. Pursue and destroy. The battle raged for 51 hours. Human Marines in powered armor boarded Dominion command stations, fighting their way to control centers and capturing enemy officers. Task forces hunted down fleeing ships not out of cruelty but out of tactical necessity. Supply depots were destroyed. Communication arrays were smashed. The orbital fortifications that should have made Karveth impregnable were methodically eliminated. Grand Admiral Vorketh watched from his command ship in an adjacent system as Karveth fell. He had retreated there after the disaster at Outpost Tarsus, waiting for reinforcements that would never come. Now he watched as the supply nexus that fed his entire war machine was torn apart by an enemy that fought without mercy or hesitation. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the humans, his communication officer said quietly. Admiral Voss appeared on his screen. She looked tired, as humans always did, but there was steel in her eyes. Grand Admiral Vorketh, I am authorized to offer terms of surrender on behalf of the Galactic Concordat. Terms? Vorketh spat the word. You expect the Dominion to surrender? I expect you to look at the tactical situation and accept reality. We have taken Karveth. We control your primary supply line. We have destroyed more than half your fleet in the past 8 weeks. Your forces are scattered, demoralized, and cut off from support. You can continue this war and watch your empire crumble, or you can accept our terms and save what remains of your people. What terms? Immediate cessation of hostilities, withdrawal from all conquered Concordat territories, reparations to be negotiated, war crimes tribunals for those responsible for atrocities. In exchange, we guarantee the territorial integrity of your core systems and a place at the negotiating table. Vorketh felt rage boiling inside him. The Dominion had never surrendered. For 400 years they had conquered and destroyed. To accept defeat from these tiny humans, these newcomers who had been in space for barely a decade. But he looked at the tactical display, at the shattered remains of his fleet, at the red markers showing Concordat and human forces advancing on every front. He looked at the recordings of human ships darting through his formations, human tactics that he still did not fully understand, human determination that seemed limitless. I need to consult with my government, he said finally. You have 72 hours, Voss replied. After that, we advance on your homeworld. I don't want to do that, Admiral. But I will if I must. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Vorketh sat in his command chair, feeling the weight of 4 centuries of conquest crushing down on him. They had thought themselves invincible. They had believed no one could stand against the Dominion's power. They had been wrong. 7 days later, the Dominion signed the peace treaty aboard the UNS Defiant. Vorketh stood across from Admiral Voss as both of them signed the documents that ended the war.